to talk to you today about the Halifax International Security Forum, an institution that's really become a focal point for the discussion of world security issues. And I had the opportunity to attend it last week to discuss the results of a survey that we conducted on behalf of the forum, the 5th iteration of a global survey that we've done in 24 countries with almost 19,000 citizens around the world to talk about what the big threats are to the world. And you know that the Halifax International Security Forum is becoming a prominent player in terms of this discussion, given that ISIL actually hijacked the hashtag from the Halifax International Security Forum and started tweeting videos and comments to people who were participating in the discussions in Halifax. So it just shows you how the new world of communications is evolving, and really, you know, things like Twitter are becoming a place where some of these issues can be discussed and worked out, and a place where you can actually make contact with thinkers and people in power who are dealing with these issues, and that's certainly what ISIL tried to do over the weekend. Now, let's talk about what we found in the survey. This is the 5th iteration of the survey that we've done, Global Survey on Security Threats. And what are people really worried about this year? Well, they're really worried about health threats, and they're worried about shooting wars. And those have both gone up. What's gone down is concern about data security. But the rise in healthcare threats and the rise in a shooting war, concern about shooting wars, really being driven by the news cycle, specifically Ebola, where, interestingly enough, Americans just trail South Africans as being the most concerned in the world about healthcare threats, which is way up in their country. And then the shooting war issue, which is obviously something that's on the border of Turkey, that's why they're most concerned about it. But when you take a look at this idea of economic power and military power and how they come together to deal with some of these global threats, it's interesting that the gap between the two of them, even though economic power is still fairly far ahead, is starting to close. And interestingly, when you take a look at who is most interested in using military means to achieve justice in the world, Americans are far ahead on that list over any other country that we conducted interviews in. Something to watch as we move forward over these difficult issues. So when we talk about which countries in the world can really serve as honest brokers in the debate and discussion over some of these security threats, who do people see at the top of the list? Well, number one, the European Union. Now, granted, they haven't had exactly the best response to some of the things that have been going on in the world, but there is an expectation that that diversity of countries can come together and start dealing with some of these issues effectively, not just on behalf of Europe, but helping the rest of the world deal with them. Number two on the list is the United States. Number three on the list is China, except if you live in Japan, where you're the least likely to believe that China will be a positive contributor to this, and most importantly, that the values of your country aren't in common with China. And fourth on the list is Russia, which has dropped below half of the population. About 46% of the world's population feel that their country has enough in common with Russia that they can work together on some of these difficult issues. The country that's least likely to believe that they have something in common with Russia, Sweden, interestingly enough. And given recent events again in the news cycle, I can see why that's a possibility. So if you want to learn more about this, just following my talking here, you'll see a couple of hashtags for Ipsos, but also for the Halifax International Security Forum. You can track through some of the things that were said, and also at our URL, you'll be able to pick up a copy of the survey results, which we've released in full. That includes the tables and graphs, and you can have a lot of fun taking a look through some of those things. So thank you very much.